Good morning, everyone. We are up to Perek Mishnah Vav, Chapter 3, Mishnah Vav. Okay. We're now continuing with discussing different areas outside the house as to whether they are going to be kaveah from Meiser or not. So the Mishnah reads, Hagagois Pturin, rooftops are exempt. Meaning, if a person were to bring produce to the rooftop, he didn't bring it into the house, but he brought it to the rooftop, that would not set the Meiser obligation to the point of not being able to snack without separating Trumas and Meisers. Now, in this case, the Mishnah continues, Hagagois Pturin, rooftops are exempt, even though they are part of a courtyard that would have been able to upset the obligation. Yesterday's Mishnah discussed what kind of courtyard sets the obligation for Trumas and Meiseris. How guarded does it have to be? How private does it have to be? But even if, so the Mishnah is saying that even if the courtyard by which this house and rooftop are part of, would have been the courtyard, kind of a courtyard that would have set the Trumas and Meiseris obligation. Nonetheless, even though you took it through that courtyard to get to the rooftop, being that you're not planning on eating it in the courtyard or in the house, but you're planning on eating on the rooftop, then we already say that the rooftop is not going to be, it's not the house, it's not the courtyard, and therefore it's not going to be kaveah l'maiser. It's not going to set the Trumas and Meiseris obligation. So the point what comes out is that if you bring something into a courtyard, and we say a courtyard is going to be kaveah, it's going to set the obligation for Trumas and Meiseris, that's only going to be if you're planning on eating in the courtyard or you're planning on eating in the house. However, if there's no plans of eating in any of those places, like in this case, the rooftop, which is its own separate area, then already we say that it's not going to be kaveah l'maiser, and you can snack on it, until you're bringing it into the house. Now, we are talking about something that actually is already processed. Nonetheless, being that the point is to bring it to the rooftop, which is an area that's not the house or the courtyard, even though you're passing through the courtyard, it will not be kaveah l'maiser, will not set the Trumas and Meiseris obligation to stop you from snacking. The Bartanura points out that this rooftop has to have an area of arba amis al arba amis, 4 cubits by 4 cubits. It has to be considered an area. Halacha recognizes 4 cubits by 4 cubits as an area. Less than that, it would not be considered its own area, but rather it would be considered just like the courtyard. And in that case, whatever the courtyard is, that's what it would be. But the point of our Mishnah at this point is to say that when a person is carrying the fruits through a courtyard that if you were planning on eating in the courtyard or eating in the house would have been kaveah l'maiser, would have set the obligation of Trumas and Meiseris to the point that you can't snack. Nonetheless, in this case, where you're bringing it to the rooftop, and the rooftop is large enough to be considered its own area, it will not pass. Just bringing it through that courtyard is not going to set the Trumas and not going to set the obligation for Trumas and Meiseris. Now, the Mishnah then talks about other parts of this area as to what status do they have. We know we have the courtyard, we have the house itself. We just discussed the roof. But now we have some other places. Now, I don't be able to see this picture. When we're learning inside, Barry Summers called this picture time. But this is the setup that we need to know to understand the next part of the Mishnah. And that is a person, let's say, live on the second floor. So they would be coming from the courtyard to this ladder. The ladder would bring them up to this, call it alleyway or this passageway. They would then take that to go into their house on the second floor. So now the Mishnah discusses the following cases. The first case is it doesn't necessarily have that picture, but we have Beis Shar. Beis Shar is a gatehouse. A gatehouse means a small structure in front of the entrance to a courtyard. Okay, there's that area. Or achsadra, which they translate as a portico, which they describe as a covered porch with 3 walls and 1 open side. Okay, covered porch, it's got a top, 3 walls and 1 open side. Or mirpeses, which is a gallery. That's the walkway in front of the apartments on the 2nd floor of a building. That's the picture that I showed you before. You have the ladder going up from the courtyard onto the gallery, which is where they would then walk to get into their apartment on the 2nd floor. So in all these situations, meaning you brought the fruits to those parts, you brought it, and again, you took it through the courtyard, but this time, instead of taking it to the roof, you took it to the portico is actually the first one, the Beis Shai, the gatehouse, is in front of the courtyard. And the achsadra, it doesn't really say where that is, but I guess it's some kind of a structure. It doesn't say, I guess I'm going to assume, it doesn't say where that structure exactly is. Would that structure also be at the opening, at the entrance of the courtyard? Doesn't say. But it could have been something in the courtyard also, possibly. And then you have the gallery, that walkway that we're talking about. In all these cases, they don't have their own status. They're not considered their own places. They just follow their secondary to the courtyard. They are like the courtyard. If we're talking about the type of courtyard that it itself could set the obligation of Shumas and Maisris, then the fruits will be set to that obligation. The Paturim. But if the courtyard is exempt, then they're also exempt, meaning they also will not set the Maiser obligation. So these areas are not considered independent areas, but they're considered secondary to the courtyard. Whatever status the courtyard has, that's the status that they have. Okay, the next positive commandment that a person can possibly disobey when one is speaking Lashon Harah. One who speaks Lashon Harah about his friend also transgresses or also disobeys through his speaking Lashon Harah the positive commandment of love your friend as yourself. That in this statement we're commanded Lachos al maman chaveroi, that we should be careful with someone else's money, as we be careful with his own. Love your friend as yourself. Treat him as you would treat yourself. You want your money to be protected and being cared for. Care for his money. And also to be careful with someone else's honor and to speak positively about them as you would want for your honor. One who speaks Lashon Harah about his friend or listens, even if it's true, and as the Chavetz Chaim is going to tell us, the fact that it's true doesn't take away from it being Lashon Harah. By doing so, if you're speaking badly about him, pretty clear you don't like him. You're certainly not fulfilling love him as yourself. The greatest proof that you're not treating him as you would yourself, everybody knows their own personal shortcomings. Nonetheless, but he doesn't want anybody to know any one of those shortcomings. Even if it happens that your friend finds out something about you that you don't want him to know, and now he goes and tells other people about it. Nonetheless, that person hopes it should only be that Hashem should make it happen, that people won't accept what he tells others. And all because he doesn't want to be considered by other people as a person who's not a good person. Even though you know much more of your own personal shortcomings than what this person said about you to others. Nonetheless, because every person cares about themselves, the fact that, this is just one little thing compared to so many other things doesn't make a difference. He doesn't want people to know his shortcomings. So too, the Torah says this is exactly how you have to treat someone else. To be careful with his dignity in all manners. The Torah told us the story in Parshas Noach, how Noach became drunk, he disrobed, and how his his grandson Chum, or actually it says Chum, saw what was going on. The two other sons were the ones who covered him up. The Torah tells us about the blessing that Noach gave them that was eventually fulfilled. The Torah tells us this whole episode of the shame of Noach and how others covered up his shame. The point of that is to show us how great this is. How a person has to be able to protect a person from degradation as he would for himself. And therefore, the person who's speaking Lashon Harah about someone else is not treating others as he would himself, and therefore disobeying the commandment of love your friend as yourself. Have a wonderful day.